It's going now.
Right. It says we are live. This is the first rendition of the 11th house on a streaming element. It's exciting. It's exciting stuff. In fact, I'm so excited that I really don't know what to say. In a rare moment, I'm speechless. It is 10:10 p.m. We're going to be doing this for roughly 90 minutes, and we're going to upgrade this as we go along. Obviously, this is a first time kind of attempt. It's a breakout of the ghetto of blog talk radio, and obviously there'll also be a live version of this or a recorded archived version of this as we after the show. Anyway, we're live, and this is an interesting time to be alive. Obviously, we've all come through the eclipses, which I talked a bit about on Friday. And by the way, you're listening to 11th House Radio and Robert Phoenix, and I'll have to deal with these at some point. I'll have to get sort of so now it's getting all kind of psychedelic, right? You get all futuristic there. Yeah. Get all William Gibson Blade Runner right there. Yeah. Anyway, you're listening to 11th House Radio, and again, this is the first live stream. And this will get upgraded. We'll have music, we'll have chat, we'll have the whole 9 yards. And this is just a way to get a footprint into this YouTube universe, which I have been far too slow to respond to be honest with you. So let's get the party started. I wanted to talk tonight about the debate for tomorrow. We'll talk about that, and then we'll also talk about kind of what's happening with Jupiter Libra. It's still in the first decan, third degree. I don't know if you have experience, but there is definitely some increased action in terms of relating, in terms of communicating, in terms of wanting to bond. Now, sometimes that's not always easy. Jupiter and Libra tries to find harmony, but remember the backside of Libra is Aries. And when we deal with Aries, what we're trying to do is when it's opposite Jupiter and Libra, there are two individuals who are doing their best to express their will, which is the nature of Aries. So with Jupiter and Libra, we're dealing with two forces, or even the Sun in Libra, which is where we are now. We're dealing with two forces, Libra and the counterforce of Aries, which is where, again, two individuals are trying to get something. Trying to get what they want out of a situation, out of a transaction, out of a relationship, whatever that is. And Jupiter and Libra magnifies that. It intensifies that. So sometimes it can intensify the negotiation. Sometimes it can intensify and expand upon the process that two people have to go through in order to get closer or to come to some kind of accord. And ultimately, with Jupiter and Libra, there's the reward that lies therein, because when you do it and you expand and open to it and move beyond what I would call the unconscious, egocentric expression of Aries. Now, not all Aries are unconscious and egocentric. I mean, it's a term, okay? It's a kind of a blanket statement, because Aries is the manifestation of pure will. And it doesn't necessarily go through a lot of cognitive steps. It is just here to express. And the egoic expression of Aries is, for the most part, what I would call unconscious. It is not Hamlet. Hamlet is Libra, right? Libra goes, well, what if I do this? What if I do this? And what if I do this? What if I do this? What's the ramifications of this? The ramifications. I mean, you can go on and on and on and on. And Libra becomes paralytic. Now, it will be very polite and very harmonious through its paralysis, its personal paralysis, interpersonal paralysis, social paralysis, but it does not have the same effect that Aries does, which just cuts right through everything and gets things done. So here we have a unique opportunity with the Sun and with Jupiter, the second Sun. Somebody asked me, well, what's the second Sun? It was actually a question posted to me. Well, the second Sun is Jupiter. It's the second sign. It's a big gassy ball that at some point in time might be called into action if our own sun decides that it's going to kind of overheat itself and check out, which may be sooner than we think, by the way. I'm just putting that out there. A lot of stuff going on with heat and light. Think about that. Putting it out there. So anyway, we're going to talk about Jupiter and Libra, and we'll look at sort of what's happening for the various signs this week. It's kind of disconcerting looking at myself. I have to kind of change that. If I do, it's fine. Okay. Oh, my familiar is here to hang out with me. Yeah, that's a good thing. So normally in the radio side, man, I feel like I'm just a voice in the dark. I'm a distant voice from the future past, and it's easy for me to just kind of go off and riff, and I'll eventually get there here. So what I want to do though is I want to start front and center with this debate piece. So if you go to my website, and I guess I might even be able to put this up here. I'm going to do another beta test here soon, and I'm going to learn how to figure out how to put these charts, and we'll have chat and all kinds of stuff. But this is really kind of the first go around, right? So I wanted to talk about the debate that's coming up. And what I did is I got the date and the time and the place. So the date, of course, is tomorrow night, which is the 26th. The time is 8 p.m. Eastern. Okay, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then we have the place, which is Hempstead, Nassau County. That's where Hofstra College is. That's where the debate will be taking place. So I took that and I created a chart for that event. And then what I did is I took Hillary Clinton's chart and Donald Trump's chart, and I mashed them all together in a three-way multi-composite. So we're talking celestial entanglement here with the three charts. And what's fascinating is that this composite chart, first of all, let me talk about a little bit about the midpoint composite. How the midpoint composite works is if we do it for just two people, it will take one person's chart and another person's chart, and it will find the midpoint between their two ascendants. And so now it's the whatever is halfway between the two ascendants, that becomes the ascendant for the chart that's going to be combined. Okay. And then it's done for every planet. So what's the midpoint between the two suns? What's the midpoint between the two Mercuries, the moons, so on, so on, and so on. Until finally we have a completely fleshed out midpoint composite chart. Now, one of the great things about a midpoint composite chart is that they're really good at assessing how two people work together inside of a relationship and how the relationship itself becomes an entity. It is almost like the deva or the monad of the relationship. Okay? That is how the midpoint composite chart works. It is different from the synastry chart because in the synastry chart, you're looking at how two individuals interact and sort of collide together in space, like atoms. The midpoint composite chart is very different. It's very different. It is moving beyond, in some ways, the slightly aggressive, active hierarchy of the synastry chart. So there are pluses and there are minuses. There are strengths and weaknesses inside the midpoint composite. Most of the time, it is done for two people. In this instance, what we've done is we've taken it for an event and two people, so that's essentially three entities. So what the program has done here, thank God for computer programs, it's basically taken the midpoint, the composite for the event and for Trump's chart and for Hillary's chart and mashed them all together and come up with this chart, which represents the energy of the event, the energy of the evening. Okay? So this is a pretty interesting exercise. So what I have here is I have Leo on the ascendant. If you go to my website, robertphoenix.com, I just put up the post for this. And I have a Leo rising chart. Now, who does this favor? When you put all three of their energies together, who does this favor? It favors Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton. I'm sorry, I take that back. No, I was looking at Scorpio. It favors Donald Trump. Why does it favor Donald Trump? It favors Donald Trump because Trump is a 29-degree ascendant Leo. 29 degrees. So he's right there. Actually, it's 29 degrees. He's at the anaretic degree of Leo on the ascendant. And then the first house is Virgo. So here we have the composite chart, the three-way, the Menage composite. It is happening with Leo on the ascendant at 19 degrees, which places Trump's natal Mars in the first house. Okay? So what else do we have here? We have Taurus on the midheaven, and then the 10th house is the first 15 degrees of Gemini, and then the last, what do we have? 5, 10, the last 12 degrees of Taurus. So when we look at Trump's chart, what do we see? Well, we know he's a Gemini, and he's got Uranus conjunct the Sun in Gemini. So here we go. We're going to go into his chart right here, the extended chart selection. Let's just go right here. Then we're going to bounce some stuff around. By the way, how's everybody doing with Mercury retrograde? I think I'm finally getting through it. I changed my tires on Friday. Maybe I was a little too aggressive with the tire change. I broke my lug nuts got broken. I had to take them back in on Saturday and have them done. It was not fun. Okay, so when we see Trump's sun, it's at 22 Gemini. And then he has Uranus at 17 Gemini. When we look at this chart, his sun is in the 11th house. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of interesting because it might actually represent more of a broadband appeal for Trump in the 11th house. And then the 11th house is quite different than the 10th house, because the 11th house, you're dealing with multimedia, of course. You're dealing with this notion of the Aquarian dream, the sort of the platform for the world to come, technology, groups, organizations, Universal, Friends, Disney. It's a small world after all. That's all the 11th house. So Trump's sun and Trump's Uranus is right there in the 11th house, which means that he'll have a pretty broad appeal in a lot of ways. He'll appeal to a greater cross-section of people that I think his more egocentric sun in the 10th house normally would or does. Now, the true node for tomorrow night is at 9 Cancer. 9 Cancer. And that's in the 11th house too. And I'll tell you what, whether it's Trump and he has his Mercury at 6 Cancer, so his Mercury is going to be right on the true node of the composite, right? The three-phase composite. His Mercury is going to be right on there. His Mercury is at 8 degrees Cancer, and the true node is at 9 degrees Cancer. So, he's going to have a really strong appeal on the populace, because the populace is Cancerian. Cancer is just folks, right? It's your home. It's where you barbecue. It's where you cook. It's where you raise your kids. It's, it's where you cheat on your wife. No, you don't cheat on your wife in the Cancer. You don't do that. I'm just messing around. But no, it is. That is the nature of Cancer, and so the candidate that will be able to strike the Cancerian note in the broadest term, because it's shown up here in the 11th house, will have the greatest chance for success. The greatest chance for success. And based upon what I'm seeing, it is Trump who is poised with Mercury at 8 degrees right on that true node to be that person. Okay. Now, the Sun is in Virgo. Again, this is all part of the composite. We know the Sun is in Libra, but we take the chart of the moment, which is for tomorrow night, and Hillary's chart and Trump's chart, and we find those midpoints. So we have Sun in the first house in Virgo, and Mercury conjunct the Sun at 15 degrees, 6-degree orb, also in Virgo. And then there's Saturn down there in the second house. Boy, that's a very powerful placement for Saturn, second house. Again, if we can look at this from kind of an agnostic standpoint, like who is going to be able to be the most effective? We've already seen that if you can speak to the Cancerian nature of the American public in very broad terms and give them a sense of hope, this is, while still appealing to their nostalgia, because Cancer is a very nostalgic sign. If either one of these candidates can do that, then they will score big points. This is Trump's game. This is his base. Hillary's base is not Trump's base. Who knows what Hillary's base is? Women, possibly, yes. Apparently, the quote-unquote minorities are starting to move away from her, and some of the polls are suggesting that. So her base tends to be educated, but not young. The millennials don't want any part of Hillary, and unless they're on the alt-right, they don't want any part of Trump. This could actually be a very big election in a weird way for somebody like Jill Stein. Or you may see, millions of people handwrite their ballot for Bernie Sanders. I mean, Sanders might show up with 10% of the vote. How about that? But that's if we have elections that are solid and real and not rigged. But getting back to the Virgo piece, with Sun Mercury conjunction, Virgo is extremely practical. Yes, it is the flash and the glitz and the projection of power with Leo on the ascendant. That will get the people's attention. And with Trump's Mars there, he'll get a lot of attention. But it's who, again, will be able to address the concerns in very pragmatic and very real terms, because that's the nature of Virgo. It is pragmatic, it is real, and I'll tell you what, one of the biggest ticket items for tomorrow night will be healthcare. There'll be healthcare. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump talks about the vets and healthcare, but healthcare is going to be on the table. It's going to be big, and he's going to talk about the rising cost of healthcare, and he's going to really play out how inefficient this model is. Excuse me. Now, what's interesting is that when we get into the composite moon of the night is in Sagittarius. Guess who has his moon in Sagittarius? That's right, Donald Trump, 21 degrees. Just a little throat elixir. Excuse me. That's my Hillary impression. So the composite moon is in Sagittarius. Now, it is conjunct Chiron and Chiron is in Sagittarius also. So what is Sagittarius? Sagittarius is the great outdoors, the big adventure. It is the big wide world. It is other countries. It's funny, Obama was talking to the UN. God, he's so patronizing. Oh my God. He's at the UN and he was talking about we got to move towards globalism. This is it. We got to get rid of these things like sovereignty and religion. It's just getting in the way. It's getting in the way of the next wave. You better get used to it. I've been thinking about this. It's very Saturn and Sagittarius. And again, Sagittarius is the big wide world, right? It's foreign countries, and Saturn is the rule of law. Sagittarius makes the law. Saturn enforces the rule of law. So here we are with this Saturn and it has so many different sort of wrinkles and complexions. Saturn and Sagittarius, especially when we get into the squares. So we're going to be talking. It will come up. This whole idea of globalism, Sagittarius, versus nationalism or pragmatism, Virgo. They're in conflict with one another. There is a sun-moon conflict. This is interesting. Even though the moon is in Sagittarius, it represents the feminine principle. The sun is the masculine or the solar principle. So what we'll see is two varying ideologies, or in a form of in a clash with one another. And don't be surprised if Trump really plays the Arab / immigrant / terror piece, because there's an opposition here. It's a wide opposition with the moon and Uranus in the composite chart, which means that somebody's going to say something or do something that's slightly radical. And I think this whole notion of radical Islam is going to be a very strong topic of debate. Now, Hillary will try to spin it in such a way that she will try to defend it in its broadest terms and kind of recontextualize and reframe that this is not what America does. It's not what America stands for. Meanwhile, Trump, on the other hand, I believe will put the screws, or do his best to put. I mean, that's not rocket science, but it's going to happen. It's going to be a big part of this debate. Trust me, it's going to be a significant part. Now, what's interesting is we have Saturn here down in the second house in Virgo. Boy, I mean, when we get into the second house, we talk about our values, our physical, material values. And I can't think of a more difficult place Saturn than Saturn in Virgo in the second house. But I'll tell you, again, if any one of these candidates wants to score, then they're going to have to get real, because Virgo is a very real sign. And they're going to have to address the economy in a way that is, again, pragmatic and not a lot of window dressing on it. It's maybe things that people don't want to hear. But Saturn in the second house in Virgo is, it's incumbents, and the person that does it, because there's a Mercury conjunction to Saturn, Mercury's at 15, Saturn's at 18 in the composite chart, then they will have, in some ways, sort of the first strike ability. But it's tricky because all these Virgo planets, Sun, Mercury, Saturn, they're all in square with Uranus and the moon. So I think that, can you get heavy-handed with it? I don't think there's any other option here. It's going to come across as being fairly rigid in some ways, and yet needs to be addressed. Now we have a Venus-Mars conjunction, which is really interesting because this is the joining of the masculine and the feminine. And look for clues in this where Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are much closer than they have appeared to be. Look for clues because they're going to be in there. You're going to see something tomorrow night that is very revealing and may actually surprise a few people. Because when we get Venus and Mars together, the masculine and the feminine together, and we're talking a 2-degree orb, there's closeness there. There's intimacy there. And it's in the second house. And there may be things that will be second house related that they may agree upon. I think the wild card in all this, to be honest with you, is Jupiter. Because in this chart, again, you can go to my website and check it out. Jupiter is unaspected. It is virtually unaspected. It has a biquintile to Uranus, semi-sextile to the Sun, semi-sextile to the Moon, not big. But it's in the third house, which means that there is, in my estimation, treasure, hidden treasure in the third house, which is communication and ideas. And again, if one of the candidates can address this Jupiter piece in the third house, ideas, fair, balanced, sharing, that they'll score big. It's whoever gets there first. Now, Trump has his Jupiter at 17 degrees Libra. So it's very close to the midpoint composite. They're not born that far apart. So his Jupiter has some axis to the composite Jupiter. It's a wide conjunction, about 10 degrees. Hillary has her Jupiter, I think it's at 1 Sagittarius, which puts it right on the composite Neptune in the fourth house. Now, Hillary is a Scorpio, and let me get her chart up here. So Hillary's sun is at 2 degrees Scorpio. Interesting. It's in the third house, which is actually pretty well placed for her. I thought that her sun was going to show up in the fourth house here. That's not the case. Her Mercury will show up in the fourth house, and her Venus right on the IC, but her sun will be in the third house. So she's going to be very Gemini. And the conjunction between Jupiter, and it is there, it is 2 degrees to 27 Libra, indicates that she might actually get points for being more balanced and quote-unquote fair. Hillary has Mars in Leo as well. And it is not as aspected as Trump's, which is on the ascendant. But in this chart, her Mars is at 14 degrees, which means that it's coming right, her natal chart, her natal Mars, she's got that Mars-Pluto conjunction in 9th house. That's just war overseas. I'm sorry. That's exactly what that is. But her Mars at 14 degrees is within a 5-degree orb of the ascendant. It's still in the 12th house, but it's trying to emerge. Trump's Mars, even though it is about 10 degrees off, it's in the first house, and it is more dominant. Even though Hillary's is conjunct the ascendant by 5 degrees, it is still in the 12th house. It is trying to emerge. It also puts her Saturn in the first house of this chart, and that could be a bit problematic. She could come off being fairly stern. But the one thing that you'll see her do, and I'm not sure which Hillary will show up, they'll probably have the real version or as close to the real as possible, although I don't think the real Hillary's around anymore. That's just my 2 cents on this thing. But she might be able to actually be quite nimble and very Gemini-like. She might be quicker than usual with that Sun-Jupiter conjunction in the third house. She's got the access. She's got the ability to connect with that, which I think is the real boon to this chart. It's what comes up in terms of being able to be balanced and fair and get into that Jupiter Gemini energy that I was talking about. Her moon in Pisces, which is at 22 degrees, is going to be in the 8th house. So it's going to be hidden in the 8th house. It should be interesting because there's a Moon-Saturn opposition going on here. Now, Trump's got the Moon-Saturn square, so they're both going to be a bit in conflict with Saturn. So they're going to have to somehow address needs in an emotional way, but also in a way that's authoritarian. I think the one that comes off the least authoritarian with that is going to be the winner. It's going to be a really interesting debate, maybe closer than people think. But because of that true node in Cancer at 9 degrees and Donald Trump's Mercury in Cancer at 8 degrees, I believe that this round of the debates is going to go to Donald Trump, no matter what the mainstream media is going to say. Trump will get this one by a little more than a hair. And some people might even, with that Uranus up in the 10th house, some people might even flip or come around to some of the things that Trump decides to share or say or postulate during the debate. Keep that in mind. There's your debate prediction from yours truly. The familiar is here. Before we go on here, by the way, tonight is this again. We're in experimental phase. Experimental phase. We're kind of starting over in a lot of ways. It's exciting, isn't it? Isn't it exciting to start over? That's what I think. So before I go on, though, I just want to take time out and recognize 2 people that have passed away today. One, an old or older icon. He's so iconic they named a drink after him. That's Arnold Palmer. Arnold Palmer passed away today. One of the great golfers of all time. Arnold Palmer was so cool out there in the greens, man. He was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And tragically, Jose Fernandez, a extremely talented pitcher for the Florida Marlins, also passed away in a boating accident today. 24 years old. Has a wife and one of the most promising young pitchers in Major League Baseball. Boating accident. Horrible. So I just wanted to give shout outs to the spirits of Arnold Palmer and Jose Fernandez. Let's get into the astrology for this week. Let's just go there. Let's talk about how this week is going to affect folks so that you can get something out of this on a personal level. Okay. So we've got the moon in Leo. Well, tomorrow night, the moon is going to be in Leo for the debate, correct? So in Trump's chart, first house. Now, the moon means that he's going to be more emotional than usual. Is he going to be a hothead? For Hillary, the moon will be in the 9th house, and it might be a bit more reserved than Trump's moon because it's out there, right? The 9th house, and she's going to talk about the world at large, and she'll probably emote in very broad philosophical terms. So we got the moon in Leo tomorrow night. The sun will be in Libra tomorrow. It's at 3 degrees right now. Mercury's at 16. We are still in the shadow of Mercury retrograde. Give us another 10 days and we'll move out of that shadow. Venus has just gone into Scorpio. Very intense placement for Venus. This is where you get really down into the basement of your emotions, your eroticism, your urges and your desires. It's all Venus and Scorpio. And see, this happens sometimes. when I'm on the radio. You just don't see it. You just don't see it. And now you're kind of seeing what occurs. Mars, 29 degrees, anoretic Sag. I think tomorrow night, by the end of the night, it might be in Capricorn. I'd have to check and go back to that chart, that debate chart. But it's at the anoretic degree. Finally, we've had Mars in Scorpio and in Sagittarius since February, roughly late January, February. And it's been back and forth, and I wish I would have spent more time in Sagittarius and Scorpio, but that's another thing altogether. It's moving into Capricorn. And when we get Mars in Capricorn, we get into Mars in Capricorn, it is all about business. It's all about the plutocracy. It's all about the system, the world, the venue of Saturn, Mars and Capricorn. It's a great place for Mars. You get a lot of stuff done with Mars and Capricorn, depending upon where it is in your chart. You got to use Mars. So wherever it is, use it. Tap into it. Jupiter is in the third degree. We talked about this. So we have a Sun-Jupiter conjunction. The first Sun and the second Sun. Fantastic opportunity for peacemaking. Fantastic opportunity for expanding your awareness around relationship dynamics, finding win-win for people or with people, or with animals. It doesn't get much better. The only thing with the Sun-Jupiter conjunction is that you may feel so good in Libra that you may not want to do anything at all. Maybe you want to take the day off and stay home and, I don't know, watch Netflix. Or if you're going to do that, don't stay home. Go to a museum. You'll have a much better time. But it's great. This is going to be the energy of the debate with the Sun-Jupiter conjunction in Libra. It's going to be fascinating. And again, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a much closer relationship with Clinton and Trump than you might imagine. It's going to be fascinating to watch. Here's our friend Saturn at 11 degrees. It has now moved into the second decan. So it is in Aries decan, which means that there's going to be a real sense of urgency for getting things pushed through, right, on that Sagittarian level. But also from a rights perspective, people are going to be very engaged in their personal rights and personal freedoms in that second decan. Now we've got Uranus right on the tails of that at 23 Aries, and it's retrograde. So it goes backwards. But again, everybody's got a stake in the game. Everybody's got to be for freedom, liberation, having their voice heard, rights. It's all out there right now. Nobody's got any real estate on it. If some people think that they're more right or righteous than others, they are wrong. But it's in the air. The spirit is in the air. Neptune, 10 degrees Pisces, retrograde as well. It's not in that opposite. It's in an opposition with Mercury, but it's moving away as Mercury's moving forward. So we're gaining more clarity. We're moving out of that fog. We're moving out of that retrograde and post-retrograde and post-eclipse fog. Pluto's at Capricorn 14. And we're going to have a Mars-Pluto conjunction coming up here. That's going to be very intense. Very, very intense. What is the date on that? Let's get specific. We like to deal in specifics. I'm always rewarded when I deal in specifics, since I am a reluctant Virgo. Let's find that out. So we've got Mars at 14 degrees, and that Mars-Pluto conjunction is happening on the 18th of October. So not too far from now. Actually, it's going to be a little bit. Hold on, we go 15. It's the 20th. The 20th of October, and that's when the moon is in Gemini, and Venus goes into Sagittarius right at that time. So Mars-Pluto conjunction to me is a really explosive, super, super explosive, down in the second house of the U.S. chart. So we're dealing with money, we're dealing with economy, we might be dealing with our old friend, the October surprise. Circle that date, the 20th of October, as a date to, that's a Thursday. So we may even just round that off to a Friday, since I love to release crappy info on a Friday. And then let's see what else we have. True Node is at 12 Virgo, and Chiron is at 22 Pisces. So let's see, anything happening there? We got a True Node square to Neptune, but the Neptune is conjuncting the South Node, which again makes it a little more difficult to navigate through reality. I guess on a person, to me, that Neptune South Node conjunction is like the bleeding heart syndrome. Like, to me, this gets right into that refugee migrant wheelhouse, because what are they doing? They're coming across on water, very Neptunian, very Piscean, take them in, allow them to, have a refuge, feel good about yourself. I mean, this is playing upon that Piscean soft spot, which used to be Christian. And then it got morphed into this, kind of liberal, progressive, kind of feel good, secular, humanistic vibe. So what happened? They just moved people from this kind of Christian ethos into another ethos that is kind of slightly more pathetic. That is Chiron. That is the South Node in Neptune conjunction. It's basically playing upon people's sensitivities, vulnerability, and their Neptunian and Piscean desire to make the world a nicer place, a softer place, a kinder place. I'll probably save this for tomorrow. I'm gonna be on the road tomorrow, but I'm gonna try to do the 15 minutes of flame. All right, let's just get into very quickly the various signs for the week. I think that this will be a potentially challenging week for Aries, because again, you're dealing with the opposition with the Sun, with Jupiter and Libra, and there's still, especially for people that are born in late Aries, there's not a real there's a strong energy for compromise. And if you can figure out how to understand what other people need and factor that into your own desire to get things done, then you can be wildly successful, and people could see another side of you this week. If you can't do that, then what will happen is that you may be forced to make concessions, or you may be forced to do things that you are not in agreement with, and in which case the opposition can widen. So this is an interesting time where you can, Aries, practice a little mutuality without losing the goal that you have in mind for whatever it is you want to accomplish. It can be done. It can be done. Show us how to do it. Taurus, because we're dealing with some complementary energies with the Sun and Jupiter in Libra, rulership of Venus, this is going to be a fairly interesting week for Taurus. But unlike Aries, which will have to really kind of navigate and try to align other people's needs with their own, for Taurus, it will be about articulating exactly what it is that you need, and not only from a place of being able to share, because Taurus isn't always, I would say that Taurus can be an articulate sign. I mean, Krishnamurti was a Taurus. He's incredibly articulate. But we're talking about kind of a higher blend of articulation. Because of all the signs, Taurus can be probably the most materialistic. When we're dealing with such strong Libran energy at the beginning of the week, Taurus has to move its Venusian perspective to a higher octave, which will also include others, but it would also include something that is not necessarily materialistic. It will be more along the lines of shared value, or something that's agreed upon by two people that's meaningful. So we're talking contracts. This is a good week for Taurus to really get into the realm of contracts, personal contracts, contracts with others, but in a way where it is clearly communicated in a kind, soft, and gentle sort of way. More can be done in that arena this week than just being stubborn, and again, not necessarily, equating it with Aries, but my way or the highway. For Gemini loves Libra energy. Gemini will bounce off of Libra energy. So they're very similar. Gemini is into the other, and Libra is into the other as well, but it's different. One is external, one is internal. Gemini, this week you have the opportunity to explore the other outside of yourself. Mutuality is the key word this week for every single sign. How you do it and how each sign does it is going to be a bit different. So this is where Gemini can really explore the other in a unique way and bring it out of its kind of solipsistic self. So extend your boundaries this week, Gemini. You'll like it. You'll dig it. Cancer, Cancer, there's a fair amount of cardinal energy. Cancer doesn't really dig cardinal energy, but Cancer will take that Venus in Scorpio every single day, that Mercury in Virgo. So for Cancer this week, I would say that where you really want to focus on is relationships. You want to focus on relationships that are very important to you, that are vital to you, especially relationships around the home. And this would actually be a really good week for Cancerian people to explore and go deeper with their sexuality, because Venus in Scorpio is very sexual. We're blending energies here, and Cancer is a very feeling sign. So this could be a ripe opportunity for all Cancers to go much deeper in terms of their intimacy. Leo, we start the week off with a Leo moon. That's great. We have Sun in Libra. We have Jupiter in Libra. Got plenty of fire in the sky. With Mars there and Saturn there and Uranus there. So I think it's going to be a pretty rock solid week for Leo. Just try to tone down the domination a little bit. Tone it down. Get into giving. If you are a Leo, find the giving gene this week. If you can do that and express your generosity and express your heart and be more into output than input, it's going to be a great week for you. Start the week off with a generous note. Go to Starbucks and throw down $5 for a tip. Blow somebody out of the water. I'm not sure it's going to happen because we're going to lose the stream here, which I was only going to have for an hour. So it's going to go off in a minute. I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop the stream, and then we'll pick this up tomorrow when I do the 15 minutes. I'll try to, at the very least. We're working the kinks out. This is going to be the basic format, and I may not be doing 2 hours on Sunday night. That might stop because I need my sleep. But I might do 90 minutes. Okay. So again, this is all brand new. We're putting it all together, but you've gotten a sense here of how the format's going to go. All right, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to see what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thank you for listening to the 11th House. Go to my website.